direct to email. So to read my statement, hello, my name is Ben Hoffman. I'm Senator Brian Kavanagh's campaign manager. Unfortunately, due to the ongoing budget negotiations, the senator is not able to attend tonight's forum. I thank the organizers of this forum for agreeing to let me deliver a statement from Senator Kavanagh, which I will now read. Hello, I would like to start by thanking Roy Ho, Property Owners Association of Greater New York, and New York Residents Alliance for reaching out to my team about participating in this forum. And I want to apologize for my inability to join tonight's meeting as I work with my colleagues to pass this year's budget in Albany. As a legislator, my most important duty is to ensure that our community is represented in Albany during moments like the current budget negotiations. That takes precedence over campaigning for my own reelection. But again, I am disappointed that this means I cannot be with you tonight. For those of you who are not familiar with me, I have served as the senator for the past 4 years and previously served in the assembly for 11 years. I'm running for re-election in a district that includes Lower Manhattan and the east side of Manhattan up to 26th Street. As a legislator, I have focused on housing, environmental issues, gun violence protection, and making sure our communities receive the things they need from government. I have tried to make sure that everyone has a voice in the debates we have about legislation and community issues, and that all of my constituents get the services they need and are able to feel safe in their neighborhoods and throughout New York. As chair of the Senate Housing Committee and as someone who has worked on housing issues for my entire career, I have worked to make sure tenants and homeowners can afford to live in our communities, and I've also listened to small property owners like members of your organization. During the COVID-19 pandemic, some people were pushing to cancel rent so tenants would not be allowed to pay, even if they had not lost their jobs. I thought it was a better approach to make sure that we paid the rents of tenants who were having a hardship and weren't able to pay. I helped create the Emergency Rental Assistance Program and the Landlord Rental Assistance Program, which protected tenants and also helped ensure that small landlords continued to receive rent payments and were able to maintain their properties. This program succeeded in giving billions of dollars of direct aid to New Yorkers, including many in the Chinatown community. I'm still working to get a lot of money from the state into this program to cover the rent that is still unpaid and to fight for the federal government to give New York our share. I am also working to pass legislation I wrote to create a new program, the Housing Access Voucher Program, which would help pay the rent for permanent housing for thousands of households across the state. Lastly, this has been an incredibly painful past 2 years for the Asian American community of New York. I want to make it very clear that I see and feel the fear and pain of New York's Asian American community and will continue to stand as an ally as we reject racism, xenophobia, and all other forms of prejudice and hate. Further, we must ensure that community organizations and resources are fully funded and available for when our communities experience such tragedy. And of course, the police have an important role in keeping our communities safe. Our police must be respectful of all New Yorkers, and we must also be effective at preventing crime and keeping people safe. I commit to working with the community to make sure hate crimes are investigated and prosecuted by our police and the district attorney's office. Thank you so much for your time this evening, and I again apologize for not being able to be there. Over the coming months of the campaign, I look forward to meeting many of you and working with you to talk about how we can support our communities. That's the statement from Senator Kavanagh. I'm going to give you my email address if you want to follow up with any questions. Again, my name is Ben Hoffman. I am Senator Kavanagh's campaign manager, and my email, which I will also put in the chat, is ben@briankavanagh.org. I will now pass it over to Lana for interpretation.
Ben, stay for a few minutes.
Lana? Hi, I am Nana. 大家好，大家晚安。我係 Lana Chang， 我中文名係張少英，我係參議員嘅華裔助理。今晚黑咧係我會讀出參議員咧嘅一份聲明。咁頭先咧係已經由我另外一位嘅同事係講咗。咁我而家係代表參議員Brian Kavanagh 州參議員咧。係宣讀以下嘅 嘅聲明嘅。咁首先咧非常抱歉，參議員咧今晚黑咧係無法參加今晚黑嘅論壇。但係參議員本人咧係非常多謝呢個論壇嘅組織各位嘅成員啊，係經過一段好努力嘅時間咧，係去籌備呢一個會議嘅。咁首先咧，我要感謝 Ring Hall 係大紐約業主協會同埋紐約居民聯盟同埋佢哋嘅團隊啦，同埋我自己本人嘅團隊咧，係能夠好榮幸參加呢個論壇。但係由於今晚黑咧，我無法參加今晚嘅會議咧，首先喺呢度我係同大家道歉嘅。咁因為咧，我而家咧正在係同我啲同事咧喺 Albany 嗰度咧係有一個預算案，係呢個州政府嘅預算案。咁我作為一位立法者咧，好重要嘅一個職責咧係確保喺當前嘅紐約州對於我本區嘅預算談判嘅時刻咧，我希望喺 Albany 咧係我能夠代表咗我嘅選民嘅我嘅居民嘅。咁所以咧，我非常即係感到係好失望。雖然咧競選連任對我嚟講係好重要，但係即係我唔能夠出席，咁亦都係表示係我嘅一個遺憾。但係我仍然係咧係希望出席今晚嘅預算案，係確保我嘅選區咧係得到咧公平嘅即係嘅款項嘅嚇。OK， 咁我喺呢度咧做講一講，對於嗰啲唔熟悉我嘅人咧，我喺過去4年中咧係擔任咗參議員呢個位置。咁我喺議會咧任職咗11年。作為一位立法者咧，我非常專注於住屋啦、環境問題啦、槍支暴力呢啲嘅問題，以確保我哋嘅社區咧喺政府嗰度咧係得到我哋需要嘅支持同埋款項。咁每一個人咧係關於立法同埋個社區嘅問題入面咧，都係有佢嘅發言權嘅。我希望我所有嘅選民咧都係獲得佢哋需要嘅服務，並且咧係整個社區、整個紐約咧係，尤其是而家治安係非常之唔好。咁我希望佢哋咧係得到安全嘅。咁我亦都係作為參議院嘅住屋房屋委員會嘅主席，咁同我整個嘅職業生涯咧，一直都係致力於解決住房問題嘅。我一直咧係確保租戶同埋屋主咧都能夠係即係得到一個公平嘅對待，同埋咧喺我哋社區嘅生活。咁我係好高興啦，係能夠得到咧你哋今晚黑嘅組織咧，係能夠俾我喺呢度咧係即係對於呢樣嘅發言嘅。咁另外咧就係我知道咧而家因為 pandemic 之後咧係好多人咧係唔能夠付出嘅租金嘅，而我亦都係好希望咧係唔好話即係將即係取消咗啲租金，咁樣對我哋啲屋主嚟講咧，亦都係一個唔公道嘅。咁我所以咧希望咧係爭取能夠政府嘅經費咧係能夠補償翻呢一啲咁嘅即係欠嘅租項嘅。咁同時咧我亦都係覺得咧，我哋而家社區咧係非常之係唔安寧，咁有好多嘅種族主義仇外嘅心理而且好多偏見或者大家有一啲好誤解嘅問題。咁所以咧，我亦都希望係即係好專注咁樣解決呢啲問題。咁我係會希望得到充足嘅資金同埋可運用嘅資源，同埋承諾咧同社區合作，確保我哋同警察同埋地方檢察官咧喺法律上容許之下咧係能夠起訴仇恨犯罪。咁我亦都係作為即係呢個反對呢個槍支濫用嘅倡導者咧，係我自己係感到自豪嘅。咁最後咧，今晚黑好寶貴嘅時間，我未能出席，再一次道歉。咁我希望喺接下落嚟嘅幾個月競選活動咧，我能夠再一次咧有機會咧同你哋大家一齊見面。喺呢度祝大家有一個健康同埋好多謝主辦單位，多謝大家。
Lawrence.
Yeah, I can get started then. Thank you so much for your invitation. Assemblymember Niou is currently negotiating the budget and was unable to attend tonight. My name is Lawrence Hong. I serve as Deputy Campaign Manager and Treasurer for her campaign for New York State Senate District 29, which covers Lower Manhattan and parts of the East Village. As a longtime champion for tenants and property owners alike, Yelene has been at the forefront of the fight in providing direct relief to our constituents on the state level and locally. We have distributed hundreds of thousands of PPE, meals, and resolved thousands of constituent cases for both tenants and small owners. We've met with many small owners in our district, and we recognize the struggles that small property owners go through on a day-to-day basis. As one of the last bastions of affordable housing, especially in Chinatown, small property owner units and small property owners have worked with their tenants and fought to ensure that they can keep multi-generational owned homes within their families while providing the same high quality hands-on housing provision that they are known for. I want to focus a lot about the issues that we've heard from our meetings with small property owners, including property taxes as well as maintenance and some concerns that they've had about rent stabilization as well. In particular, at least in Chinatown locally, we know that ever since even like 9/11 occurred, property taxes have increased. And a lot of these property taxes have made it really burdensome for property owners to operate and maintain their homes. Not only this, we know that a lot of small landlords are willing to work with their tenants, especially if they're going through hardship, to provide any type of assistance that they can, which oftentimes cuts into what they're able to provide and as well as receive in terms of income. I think that we've come to a point where we need to revisit how we address property taxes, at least on the city and the state level. And in addition to that, we need to figure out how to address the oncoming eviction cliff, which is essentially a lot of backed up cases for eviction in court and how that affects property owners and tenants, and find a fair way to address both of those situations. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all. I'm happy to answer any questions on behalf of the member, and if there are any questions that I am unable to answer, as I said before, I am more than willing to bring it back to our team and provide answers to your inquiries.
Thank you, Lawrence. We will let you answer on behalf. Thank you.
你好，他现在很忙，而且我们是想帮小房东，谢谢大家。
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Danyela Souza Igorov, and I'm very excited to be here.
感谢你们给我这个机会。我的名字是 Danyela。
I'm a mother of 2 children who are in public schools here in New York City, and I'm the vice president of the Community Education Council in District 2, which includes our district here.
我是有2个孩子的妈妈，2个孩子都是在纽约的公立学校上学，并且我是这个 vice president， 在那个 CEC 2区的 vice president。
I have worked for the past decade with education policy and working with families who are not being served by their local schools and wanted a different choice. So I've worked for over a decade with school choice.
他已经在这个教育行业干了10年了，特别是对这个学校的选择性这方面的政策有很深入的这个经验。
And through my work at the CEC, I have done a lot of work to support gifted and talent programs. I know how important it is to have gifted and talent programs and SHSAT high schools. My mother grew up very poor in Brazil and had access to a gifted and talent program in her hometown, and it completely changed her life. So I know very well how important it is for low-income families to have access to a rigorous education.
通过 CEC 的活动，就是 Danyela 非常了解这个在纽约 GNT 学校和这个特殊高中的重要性。他说他的母亲是在巴西的长大的，然后也是通过这个 GNT 的学校获得了就是说别人获不到的机会吧，所以他知道就是对中低收入人群这些小学和高中的重要性。
And my family is an immigrant family. I grew up in Brazil. My husband is from Ukraine. And we both came here looking for more opportunities, more prosperity, and more freedom.
他是在巴西长大的，他的先生是在乌克兰长大的，他们都是来美国移民，追求那个更好的机会和自由。
And finally, I want to say that I grew up in Brazil, which is a very violent society. So I know how it feels to always be afraid of getting mugged when you're leaving your house. And I am appalled about what has happened to our city over the past 2 years in terms of public safety. And that would be one of my first priorities when elected to the New York Senate.
他说他是在巴西长大的，所以他有亲身经历，就是社会的不安全性，他是有亲身经历的，所以他觉得现在纽约的这个治安环境非常的恶心。那么如果他被选成这个 state senator 的话，他的第一个就是最重要的一点就是要为这个社会的安全提供保障。好，谢谢。
Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to answer your questions and to learn more about the organization's work.
好，谢谢。
Thank you, Danyela, and thank you, Luther. So now is Vittoria's turn. Hi, Vittoria. You can unmute yourself and start introducing yourself to us. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. So Mr. Jeffrey Lee should be with us to
yes.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for joining us on such a short notice. My name is Vittoria Fariello, and I'm running for State Senate here in District 29. I am a Democratic district leader in Lower Manhattan. I've lived downtown for 25 years, and I run a public service-oriented law firm with my husband across the street from City Hall that we built from the ground up. We are raising 4 children in our downtown as well. And I'm someone who shows up, listens, and gets things done. I'll let you translate for a moment.
各位好，这位是我们的参议员，这州政府的参议员第29区，名字是 Vittoria Fariello， 他是这个民主党的这个下城民主党的一个代表的领导。他已经住在下城大概接近25年，他还有另外在一个律师楼，是跟着他的丈夫在那个律师楼呢提供一些给公众的一些服务，包括一些设备。他们在这个市政厅这里呢，他们就建立了她这个跟她丈夫建立的这律师楼，然后她跟她丈夫他们有4个小孩，也是住在下城。他们现在主要就是说，我们这位参议员，他是今天来聆听各位的意见，包括呢，他也是希望呢，透过他的这个参选去把需要的事情办好。
Thank you. So my family immigrated to the United States when I was 4 years old. By the time I graduated high school, I had moved 13 times, but I always wanted to live in New York. And once I got here, I never left. I was here through 9/11, through Sandy, and now through COVID. But moving so much as a kid taught me how to get along with people. And I learned that the one thing you always carry with you is your integrity. The summer after I was elected district leader, our current state senator was selected by the party machine. Even though the Democratic County Committee members voted overwhelmingly for his opponent, the county leader gave him the nominations because the rules allowed it. And I thought that was very wrong. So I organized with other district leaders to change the rules, and we did. And now a vote by county committee members is binding on the county leader, and we elect our own nominees to the ballot. I show up, I listen, and I get things done.
那就是我们今天主要去跟各位分享我的自己的一些的过去。我的家庭呢是移民来到美国，当时我才4岁。那我当时我刚把这个高中完成的时候，我已经搬迁过超过13次。那可是呢，我的心是一直在纽约，因为我来到纽约的时候呢，我就没离开过纽约州，我非常喜爱纽约州，我也经历过我们的911，我们的这个Sandy风灾，包括现在我们经历的这个新冠状肺炎。那因为我小的时候，我要常常跟着自己的家人去搬家，那没有固定的这个自己的家，那这个经历我在这种经历上面呢，学习到怎么样去跟别人相处，包括就是说要自己守好自己的节操，然后呢，就是说要常常向别人学习。有这个好学的一个节操，特别在
30 seconds。
我在这个当选这个区长的时候呢，我们当时州政府这个参议员呢，他被这个党选到了候选人，可是呢，当时的民主县这个委员会呢，却是极力的去选了他投选了这个对手。那当时是县的这区长呢，就给了这个对手的这个选项，然后呢，因为这个是当时的
Time's up. Don't wait.
Okay.
We can move on.
Now let's start the first question. Can you turn to the next slide? The first question, so let's have Danyela first.
So I think this is a very important issue, and I would not be for closing Rikers Island and substituting with the neighborhood jails. I think it's a very expensive plan, and we have no reason to believe that these other jails will be different than Rikers Island. The same institutions and government agencies that are managing Rikers Island would manage these new jails. And there are problems of management, there are problems of human rights abuse. And so we don't know that that would not replicate itself in the future. What I want to say is that I think it's very serious what is happening in Rikers Island. And if you look at the last report on it, it looks like we're heading towards a federal takeover, given all the human rights abuses that are happening there. So there's got to be a solution and be better managed. But I don't think that the solution is it's this very expensive and ineffective plan. And also the plan does not account for the same number of people that are currently in Rikers that would be able to fit in all the neighborhood jails, which I think is a huge problem as well.
Thank you, Danyela. You made the point. So would you like your interpreter to translate your answer?
Yes, please.
对，好，他不支持关掉这个雷克岛监狱。首先就是说，这个监狱里的人权的问题，还有这个监狱里管理的问题，还有这个重建监狱这个资金的问题等等，都没有一个很好的方案。而且就是说，如果这个雷克岛监狱的管理层来管理这个新建的监狱的话，那么同样的问题可能还会被重演。譬如说监狱里的这个人权问题，所以他不支持这个关掉这个雷克岛监狱。谢谢。
Thank you, Lawrence. So now it's Vittoria's turn. Hi, Vittoria. So you heard my question, right? So,
I did.
Yeah. What's your solution for the Rikers Island jail?
So thank you so much. Rikers does need to be closed. We know for many reasons. And I have worked with our city council member, Christopher Marte, since the very first time he organized a rally about 3 years ago. And I'm honored to have received his endorsement in this race, because he knows that I understand what this would mean, building a jail in Chinatown, what that would do to the community, as well as not solving the issues in Rikers Island. We're not, by building other jails, something as Danyela said, unless there are safeguards there, we can have the exact same thing. But we need to find a solution that doesn't require building more jails. And in fact, if the goal is to reduce the number of people incarcerated, it is quite, it's not, it doesn't make sense to maintain a certain number of prison cells. So I unequivocally stand against building any of the new jails. And I think that we can still close Rikers. It's not an either or question.
So Vittoria, just be clear. I heard you initially said Rikers don't have to be closed, and then you later on you seem saying Rikers should be closed. So you are.
I'm sorry. No. I think Rikers needs to be closed. It does, but it doesn't. The problem with Rikers is that it's the location. Its remote location makes it easy for a lot of to lack the necessary oversight. But we don't need to build more jails. We do have space at the moment that we can use elsewhere. It doesn't have to be a building. And even if we did build these jails, the timeline doesn't match up, right? We have to have the Rikers needs to close within 3 years. And the jails, they've said, would take about 8 years to close. So this is not a solution that's going to work for anyone.
Okay, thank you. So now the interpreter, please.
我们这位 Victoria 她的回复是说，她首先呢是赞同把这个雷克岛监狱关起来。她的这边之前有个机会跟这个市区长 Christopher 工作过3年，在3年期间呢，他们有做出这个就是反对。而且呢，他自己的见解就是说，我们主要的目标是尽量减少这些监狱囚犯，可是呢，去把更多的监狱建立起来这不适当，也是不合理的。我们特别他也反对说把这个新监狱建立在我们的唐人街。那他的这个意见是说，我们主要是说可以找一些别的地方，那去考虑怎么样去有着足够的监狱使用，因为主要我们把这个雷克岛的监狱把它关起来呢，这个是首先一个初步的一个好的方案，因为这个雷克岛的监狱是比较偏僻的一个监狱地方，所以呢，包括去 比较好，看重人权，包括尽量减少我们这些监狱的囚犯的这个方案去着想的，我们应该他是赞同把这个雷克岛的监狱把关起来。
Okay, thanks. Next question. How would you plan to resolve the lengthiness in housing costs where many cases last more than 18 months? 就是你如何解决这个房屋法庭有18个月还没有判决的这个情况 ？So let's go to Danyela.
Yes, and I think this is a very, very important issue as well. Housing is so important, and we cannot have not only housing, but also in public safety, the cases taking so long for us to have an answer. And as many other problems in the New York State, I think it's important for us to know that it's not a lack of resources, right? The New York State budget is so big now that it is, if it was a country, it would be the top 51st country in the world. So as in many other issues, there are resources. It's just a matter of us making budget allocations and making sure that these resources are being used well. So other examples, for example, it's New York City public schools, more than $40,000 being spent per child, $40,000. You cannot throw more money at this problem and think that there is a solution there. Homelessness, the city now is spending more than $1 billion in homeless services, and that has dramatically increased over the past few years. It's not getting better. So again, with all these problems, the question is not a lack of resources, it's how our elected officials are making choices in the budget and making sure that the resources are being used correctly. And there is no reason why we need to wait for so long to have answers from our courts.
Okay, the translator.
我来翻译一下。就是 Danyela 说呢，就是说这个悬而不决的情况呢，肯定是不对的。那么纽约州呢就是从纽约的预算来看的话，是一个不差钱的州。如果纽约的预算GDP 放在全世界比的话，是可以排名全世界第51位。那么你比如说纽约州公立学校给每个小孩花4万美金，但是成绩却不怎么样。纽约州花10亿在这个无家可归人的问题上，也没有得到很好的这个就是解决方案。所以这个就是说在不差钱的情况下，应该把这种就是社会治安和这种居民的问题放在首位去解决。谢谢。
Okay, thank you, Danyela. Now, Vittoria, your turn to answer this question about housing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. It is indeed a big problem that the housing courts are backed up, and even more so now as we've seen that the eviction moratorium was in place for so long and now has been lifted. And so there's been a huge influx into the court system. So we do need, but even before the moratorium, this was a problem. And so we need more judges. We need more judges and more ability. So they can take on the larger volume of cases to move things along. And I think if there is a way to resolve these cases, whether it's an arbitration or mediation outside of the courtroom, that would be helpful. And I think there are methods that we could explore in doing that. But clearly the first and most effective thing we can do is to increase the number of judges in the housing courts.
是的，我觉得特别呢，在这个房屋法院里面呢，有这个累积了大量的这些个案，没有去得到这个就是适当的解决。 然后就是酒仙不觉得这种情况呢是不正当的。特别我们现在发现有很多被驱逐的这些个案，一直就是往法庭里面对级。那我们最主要也发现是他们把这个就是州政府宣布暂停，就是驱绝这些房客的这个事情已经没有继续上效。那我觉得主要最首选的方案是应该使用更多的法官，或者是说聘用更多的法官去处理这些堆积在法院里面还没受到处理重视的这些个案，或者是说如果没能够及时聘用到更多的法官呢，我们可以透过一些和解员，就是协调员去帮助呢房东跟房客去处理好这些我们这个纽约房屋的问题。谢谢。
Thank you, guys. So now let's move to the next one. This question is about safety. So the question itself is, how would you make New York City safer? And particularly, would you support to revisit or repeal the cash bail reform, which started in 2020, and believe that was one reason that was responsible for all this crime increase for the last 2 years? 就说这个问题呢，是说，就是你如何让纽约更加安全，并且就是你有没有认为这个从2020年1月份开始实施的这个无保释金保释金的这个法律改革，是造成了现在纽约市犯罪激增的一个原因，并且你愿不愿意就是重新就是来审视这个法案 ？So would you like to revisit the no cash bail reform and give the judge discretionary power to set bail? Okay. Now let's turn to the order. So Vittoria, it's your turn. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. To resolve the issues of the crime issue, we need to be looking at the data and see what it is that is causing the crime. And all data, I've seen nothing yet to show me that bail reform itself has in any way affected the increase in crime. What we do know, and what I've known from speaking with the police officers, is that we need better social services, that when they get a call, when it regards and requires mental health services or requires a social service person, they need to be able to rely on our social services to show up. That's exactly what I heard when I spoke with them last year about this issue when it first started becoming very prominent, that they would, when they got a call for a homeless person or someone who was mentally unstable, and if they're not doing something illegal, they can't do anything. So they have to call social services, and they call the Department of Homeless Services or what other department works. And they told me that they waited on average between 2 to 3 hours for someone to show up. And that's a real problem. We also need to bring back our businesses. Part of the problem is that we don't have people on the streets. We need our city to fill up again. So we need to help our small businesses to come back and come back strong. And so those are, I think, the two main things we need to be looking at.
Okay, now the interpreter.
是的，我觉得在面对这个我们纽约安全的问题呢，我之前有跟我们的警员呢合作过，特别我发现呢，当我得到他们的这个反馈，主要是说，当我们遇见一个有精神健康的障碍的一个人，或者是情绪不稳定的，或者是一个流浪者，一个无家可归的一个人，有点就是小行为呢，可是不属于这种犯罪的行为。那我们应该是可以去以这些事工或者是专门去处理这种精神健康障碍的一些援助者， 我们特别需要这种社工、这种社会服务这种的工作人员，因为当我们遇到这些情况的时候呢，我们不一定是需要去以警员去处理，因为他们不一定是做任何犯罪的行为，可是我们必须要得到这些的一些援助，就是透过处理这精神健康的一些专人或者是社工。那之前我得到的反馈就是说，以前他们遇到这种情况，他们打电话去求助的时候，等候一个像这类的这社工或者是处理精神健康的一些专人呢，要等大概平均2到3个小时，这个是一个非常大的一个困难或者问题，不应该是这样的。另外还说我们的小企业呢，应该有更多的就是援助，透过政府的援助提供给他们，帮助他们呢带回我们之前市区的这个繁忙的这个城市，希望帮助我们的小企业更多。谢谢。
Thank you, Vittoria and Luther. Now it's Danyela's turn to answer the question about the bail reform and how to make New York City safer.
Yes, and as I mentioned, I grew up in Brazil, which is a very violent society, and I have seen how violence and crime impacts particularly low-income communities. It's always the people who are lower income who suffer the most with violence, and it really creates more inequality because it destroys social trust in our community, the surge in crime. And this is one of the main reasons why I am running. I would absolutely revisit the bail reform law. I think it's one of the main causes of the surge in crime. I don't know which police officers you have been talking to, but the ones that I've been talking to absolutely are against the law. They say they are arresting people who immediately are being released. New York State now, it's one of the only states in the nation who don't allow judges to consider public safety in pretrial decisions. So you have people literally being arrested, released, and going on a pattern of escalating crimes. And literally, like, people know now that if they commit crimes, they are not going to be in jail for long. And so I absolutely think we need to revisit the bail reform law. And I want to mention one particular case that for me is so, it really illustrates the situation. So the man who attacked a woman at the subway with feces, and it was also an anti-hate crime, he had attacked 2 other people at the subway the month before, and he was arrested, released. And that day, after attacking this woman with feces in the subway and saying some anti-Semitic things to her, he was also released. And then a couple of weeks later, he threw a dumbbell on a storage unit from the window. Thank goodness nobody was hurt. But then for that person stayed in jail. So literally, he had attacked 3 people before on the subway, was not in jail for long. And then when actually did not hurt anybody, then he stayed in jail. The situations that are happening in our city are completely absurd. Something needs to be done, and we need to allow judges to have discretion in pretrial decisions.
Okay, now the translator, I forgot your name. I'm sorry. Thank you.
是我是这个翻译，就是 Danyela 绝对支持要重新就是这个保释金就是要整改这个保释金的政策。纽约州他是在巴西长大的，他亲眼就是所见这些暴力的犯罪行为对这个社会的影响。特别是对中低收入阶层的那个影响所以他觉得这个就是纽约现在这么多的犯罪行为和这个就是没有现金的保释金的释放有非常非常大的关系你比如说他举一个例子说有一个人在地铁里头像一个犹太人扔那个粑粑呀 feces 粑粑然后说这个人已经被因为犯罪已经被抓起来 2次，就是在那次之前犯罪行为之前已经被抓起了2次，都被放走了，然后第3次又被放出来了，然后后来又干了一件什么事情才被关进去，但是第4次犯罪并没有伤害别人，所以就是说是这种保释的行为非常的没有头理，所以纽约现在这么多的犯罪行为，就是让人感觉到这个城市很荒唐所以他坚决支持要改革这个政策。谢谢。
Move on to the next one. Do you support the hetero calendar? So I hope you guys are all familiar with this one. So basically, it was a law passed by New York State, and it specified the use of special high school tests as the sole criteria for determining admissions of the 8 special high school in New York City. 就是那么这个问题是问他们是不是支持现在的特殊高中考试继续作为被特殊高中录取或不录取的唯一标准，这个是1971年的州法规定的，他们是不是支持这个州法？ Danyela, yes or no?
Absolutely yes. I have a long track record supporting.
Okay. That's enough. Okay. 他说他支持。Vittoria, yes or no?
No, not as a sole criteria.
Okay, thank you. 他说他不支持作为唯一标准。Okay, next question. Do you support good cause eviction bill? So it's about the landlord and tenancy issue. 就是说这个问题是问就是关于那个房东房客问题的，就是他们支不支持，就是说有正当理由驱逐房客的议案。Vittoria, you first.
With modifications, yes.
他说就是做一些修改，他会支持。Danyela?
No, it's too radical against small property owners.
So you don't support the good cause eviction bill?
No.
Okay, 他说他不支持这个正由驱逐议案。Okay, next.
好，谢谢，首先谢谢主持人，你们2位辛苦了。我想请问那个竞选员，他们对纽约唐人街的现有6家的5家合规和接下来还在计划中的4家，总共10家的游民所，他们是什么态度对待？
陈双，你能来翻译一下吗
？Okay, I can speak in English.
Yeah, please translate.
Okay, that's fine.
Translate May's question into English to the candidate. Thank you.
Okay. So the question is
No. I'm asking 陈双 to translate. 陈双，你可以 translate 吗？
我没有仔细在听，I didn't expect that. Sorry.
Hi, May, can you ask again in English or Chinese?
Oh, okay. I can speak in English.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, my question is, in Chinatown, have existing 6 shelters, homeless shelters is running, and additional 4 more shelters will be planning on the way. So what exactly your for Kennedy or whatever the existing, what exactly the answer?
So the question is about the homeless shelter. I see Vittoria, so can you answer first? Thank you, Vittoria.
Sure, thank you. So Chinatown does have its fair share of homeless shelters as it is. So there are lots of other places even within the district where we could put homeless shelters. So I think Chinatown does not need another one. let alone 4.
Okay, thank you. Luther, can you translate? Luther, 你可以把这个把这个 Vittoria 的答案就是来翻译一下吗？
Luther is my translator.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
I missed. Yeah. So, but
yes, sorry. Yes. 是的 ，Victoria 去回答这个问题。他说呢，他是觉得在唐人街呢，这真的不需要再建立额外的四个这个庇护所，这个流浪的这庇护所，因为别的市区城市呢，我们都应该去考虑，不要单单就是这加在去唐人街那边，我们已经有这现有的6家已经足够了，4间已经很足够了，那不用了，谢谢。
Okay, Danyela, can you answer?
I agree with Vittoria on this. I think Chinatown has more than its fair share. There are other places that could accommodate. And I think we need to completely rethink our entire approach in this issue, particularly the shelter that is being proposed in Chinatown, where they would allow drug usage, which I know the community is very concerned, and I would as well be very concerned. So I would not support that.
Thank you. Now please have your translator.
Danyela 也是绝对不支持在中国城在新建游民所，特别是他听说这个新建的游民所居然可以使用毒品，所以他觉得这是太令人担忧了，所以他肯定不会支持的。
Okay, thank you. 好，谢谢。I think 就是现在已经9点35了，我们就不再接受其他的新的问题。那么第一个问题是马先生，陈双，你做好准备，就是给马先生翻译了吗？
好的，我准备好了。
请马先生提问。
好的，那我说英文中文也可以。我的问题就是说，房东房客的问题。钱是一个方面，更重要的，它是一个私人财产 private property， 这是美国的立国之本，这是美国几百年，全世界这是1万年不说了。如果这样纵容人们可以不交钱，这完全是抢劫私人财产，完全 against the American spirit。
你问题是什么呢，马先生？
我就问这个问题。这个议员的参选人对这个怎么看？保护私人财产
，OK，
承认不承认这个财产是私人财产，应该 absolutely protection。
就是您承不承认这个就是这个房东的这个房子是他的私人财产 ？OK。
还有就是你必须得到国家的保护。
Last 10 seconds.
OK，
你可以说不可以，你可以说不需要保护。
OK，
可以，谁需要就用。你可以说，
行，我们听懂了，马先生。
这个人的看法。
陈双 ，OK。
Okay. So his question is about the landlord and the tenants. Besides the money, the rent part, do you think it's their house is their personal property, and letting the tenants live in their houses or apartments without, letting them collecting the rent they're supposed to get? Do you think it's against the Constitution of the American, which is like protecting personal property is one of the basics of like where American builds up to? So like, do you agree that with the Constitution? Like, do you think like that their personal property should be protected by the government? Okay, that's a question.
Danyela?
Yes, I believe in the Constitution. I think as elected officials, we need to defend the Constitution. And you're absolutely right. Some, our opponents, Senator Kavanagh and Assemblymember Niou, who have supported this bill. The bill main sponsor says on her website that she's trying to dismantle capitalism. And there's another elected official who's also supported this, who is on record now. There is a video saying that he doesn't believe that housing options should be owned by private citizens, that it should all be owned by the government. So I believe in capitalism, in free markets, and I believe they need to be regulated when there is corruption and misaligned incentives. But this bill, I think it goes so far in the direction of protecting tenants' rights. And, you know, both tenants and landlords have responsibilities and also rights. And I think we need to pass bills that creates a balance in that relationship, and not this radical bill that it will really create so many disincentives for people to rent their properties.
Okay, translation, please.
Danyela 说，马先生，你的看法是绝对正确的。Danyela 也是支持捍卫美国宪法的。他说就是说现在纽约州的这个法律的议案太左了，有不知就是对就是不知这样的话就不会激励这些有财产有房屋的人去把这个房屋租出去，但是Danyela呢也承认，就是说就是房东和租房人都有责任和这个权利，那么在一些方面这个法律是要保证这个公平的，但是从原则上来讲就是他绝对支持马先生所说的事情。谢谢。
Okay, hi. Vittoria, your turn. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So yes, I do. I'm a lawyer. I believe in the Constitution, and but there are, you know, under the Constitution and the court's rulings, we have the ability to regulate certain areas. However, I don't think it's necessary to do, you know, you have to have a balance where you can provide for what the people need, but also allow for people to have their property and be able to dispose of it in the way that they'd like to, in a way that is consistent with what we need in society. I do think that we need to, when we look at the good cause eviction bill and other even the 2019 tenant law that was passed, we need to be more considerate of our small landlords, small property owners. We really, I think what happens too often when we craft laws is we have one target in mind and don't realize the ripple effect of that law. And that is something that really needs to be revisited and understood better from the perspective of small property owners.
Okay, thank you, Vittoria. Now, Lothar, you want to translate? Thank you.
是的，马先生，我赞同你的看法，因为我也是一个律师，那我当然是相信就是说我是重视这个美国宪法的。那但是在我们的就是众多的这些法则里面呢，我们应该有一些就是能调整的一些地方，包括呢我们要抓着一个平衡。那就平衡什么呢？就是说我们要怎么样去面对就是有这个市场的所需，比方说有人要租房的，或者有多少的房东。那再考虑到就是说这个是可能先涉及到之前我们那个就是征邮的那个驱赶的那个法则，包括19年的这个房客法则。那我们发现呢，可能我们没有去重视我们没有去重视我们的这些小企业的雇主，或者是小房屋的房东。 我们觉得这方面呢应该多重视，包括给他们相关的一些援助。谢谢。让他能够呢有地方居住，然后好让他们准备。这主要是我们在预算上面呢去把这个资金预算好。
Thank you, Vittoria. Now Lee, it's your turn to ask a question. You can ask in either English or Chinese or both.
All right, thanks. So I only have like 2 really simple questions, and I prefer to take yes or no for answer. So the first one would be, do you guys support or like against the Black Lives Matter movement? Second one would be like, are you guys for or against affirmative action? So like, I would prefer to have answers either in yes or no. 我的问题就是说，您两位，您支持这个黑人的命也是命运动吗？第二个问题就是，您两位支持平权法案吗？
Well, we didn't expect, the audience to ask yes or no question, but since we're already here late, so if the candidates wouldn't mind, please answer. Vittoria?
Sure, I absolutely support Black Lives Matter. I'm not sure what feels like a trick question, but yes, I do. And I'm sorry, what was this? The second question was?
The affirmative action.
Affirmative action, in certain circumstances, again, yes, I do.
Okay,
Interpreter.
是的，我赞同这个，就是运动黑人的命也是命，我赞同。然后第二个就是平权的这个，在某种的情况之下，我也是赞同的。
Okay, thank you, Danyela.
I think it is a tricky question. The concept Black Lives Matters, of course, I support, but the organization where people are taking money and buying $1 million homes in LA, with the corruption, no, I do not support, absolutely not. And affirmative action, it depends. I also think it depends on the circumstance. It depends if it is, undermining meritocracy. So I do think it depends. And I don't think the question, it's as simply answered as is being posted here.
Translator.
首先黑人的命也是命，如果就这句话来评论的话，那肯定是支持的。但是咱们仔细看一下这个黑人命的这个运动之后，有很多的腐败的现象，去用这个筹的钱在洛杉矶买房子呀等等这些腐败的现象，所以他不支持这种现象。那么关于这个就是 affirmative action 呢？这个不是一个很好，就是说简单的是或者不是的问题。如果 affirmative action 对这个公平竞争起到了不良的影响，那么肯定是不对的。谢谢。
Hi everybody, and I heard everybody's concerned about housing, insurance, and shelter, and White Guy Island. Yes, they are all important, and I just asked if something might be a little bit out from our area. What we understand that our community need a backbone like a small business, just like a mom and pop shop. Chinatown have been effect since September 11. Now it's a pandemic. I would like to ask two candidates, imagine you take the position, what you can do make Chinatown better. Thank you.
陈双能翻译一下吗？
好的，我们就是我想问一个跟大家稍微不一样的问题，就唐人街经历了这个911，现在又经历了这个 pandemic， 就这个疫情，然后他想问两位这个候选人，就问所有候选人，他们怎么样可以让唐人街变得更好
？Danyela. your turn.
Yeah, I think that's a very important question. Thank you. I have said multiple times, I don't think we can solve our economy without solving public safety. So, so many businesses in Chinatown now are closing earlier in the day because they are afraid of crime, right? And then the streets are empty. We will not get people back into the offices and back to our small business, to the restaurants, to the bodegas, until we solve crime and people can take the subway safely to their job. And so I really think that the economy and public safety are so interconnected. And that's why if I get elected, my priorities are going to be education, reforming the bail law, and the economy, because you cannot solve one without the other.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Now the translator.
谢谢你这个问题你这个问题问的非常的关键要想振兴中国城的经济，首先要把这个公共安全问题解决好。现在就是说很多中国城的商店早早的就关门了，就是因为担心这个安全问题。所以这个 Danyela 竞选的这个平台就是要抓好教育，抓好这个公共安全因为这个经济和这些问题都是息息相关的。谢谢。
Okay, for Vittoria, how to?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. It is incredibly important. Chinatown is such a critical part of our district. So it really is important to me to help bring the small businesses come back. I've actually worked with District Leader Vittoria Lee, who has endorsed me as well in this race, in helping provide the funding through Welcome to Chinatown, an amazing organization that has helped throughout this pandemic, and it's going forward as well. Really, and that's financial help. But I, of course, agree that we have to bring back the city. We have to bring people back. We have to bring back our tourism. We can do that. And I think we also, one of the things that was highlighted during the pandemic was that our bureaucracy was when small businesses were trying to either put outside, the restaurants were trying to have outdoor seating, or they were trying to receive the funding that they were entitled to from the government. It was all backed up, and the bureaucracy was incredibly difficult. I spent a lot of my time as a district leader helping them unwind that. So making things more efficient, too much regulation on some issues for the small businesses. So that's something we can do to help them come back and support organizations like Welcome to Chinatown and Save Our Chinatown. There are other organizations that have done tremendous great work. So we really want to support them.
Thank you so much, Vittoria. Now your translator.
是的，谢谢这个问题。那这个对我们这特别我治管理的区域呢是特别重要的。主要我之前跟 Vittoria Lee 这位区长呢有合作过，他也是主要在当中特别我们的这两个非常重要的提出是重大贡献的这两个机构 Welcome to Chinatown 包括Save Chinatown 主要我们是要关注到我们的小企业或者呢怎么样复苏我们这个唐人街的一些经济，透过就是帮助小企业，也帮助我们的这个唐人街的这些经济发展，包括呢把这个就是旅游业这方面呢是复兴，希望透过这几方面呢去再就是得回我们之前的这个唐人街，特别我们要知道再去得到这个预算的这个致敬呢，我们也是要遇到这个非常艰难的一个官僚的一些政策的事情。那我们希望也是透过这两个已经对唐人街做出重大贡献的这两个机构，希望我们更多关注到我们唐人街的小企业。谢谢。
Very grateful for that. So I'm done. Okay, I leave to you, Roy. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, the first person I need to thank is Danny Chan. He actually asked a question that should actually be obvious for this district, and that is how to actually make Chinatown better. And I actually want to share one thing with the candidates. That actually answer is very simple, and Christopher Mate actually already said it as well. Open Park Road. A lot of the things would have been gone. And there has been 20 years, more than 20 years now, and Park Road is still closed. Anyway, that is not a question. So just to share my opinion that at least Christopher Mate back then thought that it was a good solution. Next, I need to thank the candidates, Dongwei as the moderator and our interpreter, as well as the candidates interpreter who help us out. And in particular also is Ben Hoffman and Lawrence Hong, who are the designated representatives of the candidates, of the other two candidates who are actually in the budget session. They are not actually busy in some parties. They are actually in Albany having assembly and the Senate meetings for the budget. And again, like what Dongwen was saying, a question will be sent to you guys, and please respond. If you guys can actually respond in video, we will put them in YouTube. Thank you, everyone. And tomorrow night will be the Flushing district, same time. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you all. All the three interpreters were amazing. Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Great job. Thank you very much.
Great job. Bye. Bye, Danny. 谢谢金主题。OK。
拜拜。
好，谢谢大家，今天的会议到此结束。明天会是法拉盛区的这个候选人的会议，请大家也要按时参加，也是一样的时间8点。
谢谢郑爽 ，OK， 拜拜，谢谢各位。
Thank you， 东卫 ，Thank you，Thank you，Roy。
Thank you。
好，谢谢黄大哥 ，OK。
唔該晒 ，Thank you。
Thank you。